You guys, good morning, good day, good afternoon, all of it, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Self Rebellion. My name is Intatu, and thank you so much for joining me. I also want to say Happy New Year. Oh my goodness, I can't believe we're in the new year. It still doesn't feel like it because I didn't have the midnight crossover session. I left early because I was so worried about my dog who's biting me right now and going crazy. And I didn't really get to see the fireworks and the hugs and everyone just welcoming the new year. So I feel like I didn't have a proper transition. But anyway, today I wanted to expand on the previous episode I posted. Now, the previous episode was my reflection on friendship breakups. And at the time, I thought I was going through a friendship breakup and I was spiraling. That was actually a second recording because the first one I was just crying and emotional, and I was like, there is no way I'm putting that out there. So the second one was a little bit calmer and more reflective. And I'm so glad I did that because it allowed me to see how my actions also contributed to how things unfolded, right? I mean, a lot of times we feel so justified to act a certain way, even if those actions are wrong, So I was able to step back and really reflect on how my behavior had contributed to my friend feeling like I didn't want her there, or I didn't treat her fairly, or I wronged her, So that was really, really useful. But I also wanted to record this one post the conversation that her and I had, which didn't lead to a breakup, but it certainly altered the course of our friendship because I think we're all just threading cautiously around each other because you don't want to stay up the port again, Oh my gosh, I feel like such a millennial. All these words I'm using. But yeah, I suppose we don't want to stir things up and eventually lead to a breakup, And I suppose this is my experience. I don't know where she's feeling, but I can see the politeness, on her side. We're both being so polite with each other, and it's bothersome to a certain extent, but it's also understandable because the alternative is not ideal. It's not preferred on any front. But talking with her made me realize that we leave so much unsaid that isn't right. When you leave gaps, you leave the other person to feel those gaps, and sometimes with wrong information because our minds spiral and they make things out to be worse than they actually are. That's what I was feeling that day, and I think I just catastrophized everything, and it felt like, oh my gosh, my friendship is ending, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm here again. After going through that first friendship breakup in 10 years, of almost 10 years, guys, that was so debilitating, to be quite honest. And I suppose it hurt more than any breakup I'd ever had with a boy, because I refused to cry over a man. Oh my gosh. I may have shed a tear here and there, but it's never taken me 2 years to get over any man, I think the breakups I've had that were quite hurtful was more mourning the loss of myself in the relationship than the partner, if you know what I mean. Everything I had let slide because I wanted to maintain the relationship, or that I hadn't seen at the time, but in hindsight was, more aware of the damage and how bad things had gotten. Oh my gosh, my dog is literally wrestling my jersey. Wrestling my jersey. He's teething, so he's going through the most. I'm going through the most. But yeah, can you hear him grunting? Sorry, I'll have to pause this for a bit to attend to him. Yeah, but I'd never shed tears to that extent, to the extent that I did for my former friend. And I find joy in that. Like I enjoy that I place my friends, at a higher caliber than I do a man, because for me, friends or friendships are for a lifetime. They're forever, they're family. Whereas with a man, oh, a man in my books will just do the most, and they will embarrass you. I'm yet to meet a man who's gonna, beat those rumors. But yeah, that's why I place girls more significantly in my life. But I also realized that the potential hurt you could suffer at the hands of women, of your friendships with women, is also catastrophic. And I just wasn't prepared to go through that again, So I'm glad we had an honest conversation and we were able to talk. And I think what I love is that I reflected on my actions. That was so important for me, guys, because I'm not a saint either. I'm fallible and I'm capable of causing harm and hurt to another person. And it was important for me to see that, right? And see that I can also be a villain in someone else's story. I think a large part of my identity is premised around being good. Like, I know I'm good, guys. I'm good. My intentions are good. I always want the best for people. I want to see the best in everyone. And that's why I have blind spots sometimes, because I look at the world as inherently good, because that's my premise as well. But it was good then, humbling almost, to see that, hey, I'm just as capable of wronging others. And that allows you to still do the work, to reflect on your actions, on your intentions, and how you show up in the world. I love that. Upon having, the conversation with a friend of mine, I talked to him and I was like, oh, this and this and this happened. And he said to me, you were selfish. And he was saying this in the most loving way. And I heard it. And I held space for those words. And they were liberating to me for some reason, because I do move around selflessly, right? I always want to show up for people and whatnot. But I think certain behaviors in that time were just placing myself first, which is something I don't usually do. Under normal circumstances, I'll be cordial. I'll be going the extra mile and thinking for everyone else, I did feel responsible for this trip because I'd planned it, I'd driven there, I'd spoken to a friend of mine, and I was like, bless you, Baba. So I felt a level of responsibility. I felt responsible for someone else having fun, and I was like, oh, I hope this is just as enjoyable for them as it is for me. But there's a certain point in the trip where I felt like I was just leading with taking care of, everything. And like, I was just stressed, and I was like, that's not how I want to be feeling. I'm also here on vacation and I want to rest and I want to have a good time and I just want to be carefree, which is what the trip was about for me. But now I was finding myself overextending mentally more than anything, to say I need to think about someone else and I need to be accommodating and all these things. And it was exhausting, to be quite honest. And at some point, I think I was like, no, I'm not gonna, I think I'll just make a decision and then stick with it. I wouldn't try to convince or, go the extra mile or be accommodated. I think, I was exhausted and I was just like, I'm doing me, and the way I did it may not have been fair in certain respects, but I think it was necessary for me to put myself first, because I don't usually do that, guys. And maybe I took it to the extreme then, because people know me to be this nice person, right? And always trying to accommodate people takes work. It takes consideration. It takes being thoughtful. And sometimes it's just like, I want to do this, so I'm going to do this. You want to do that, I'll let you do that, And the consequences of that don't always work out how we see them, but it's okay, And so when Sma said that, oh, you were selfish, you needed to be more. He didn't say you needed to be more selfish. He was like, you were selfish. I was like, yeah, I was selfish. And I think I need to move in a selfish way more, because when I finally do it the first time, it's shocking. It's unexpected and may even cause, issues with the people in my life. Or I do it to the extreme that it leaves the other person feeling like I don't care, that I'm not considerate or whatever the case is. But I think if I put myself first more, I'm going to be happier, guys. I think people do this all the time. It's not something I always do. Like, I always think about people, and it's exhausting because I also need to be my own priority. And this takes me to, the conversation about relationships. It always boils down to that for me, right? But hold on, let me have a sip of coffee. Part of the reason why romantic relationships are appealing to me is because I think about the idea of having someone who prioritizes you just as much as you prioritize them. And we can say, yes, our friends are people and whatnot, but essentially our friends have other priorities that take precedence. Our friends have families, our friends have other friends that they may be closer to. Our friends have their jobs that are more important. If I were to have a crisis, I wouldn't call my friends. And if I did, not all of them would probably drop everything to be there for me. It has to be at a convenient time for them to show up. Even if it isn't, there's a lot of moving parts that they need to put in place in order to show up for me. Like, I'm thinking, for instance, if I were to drop and be admitted at the hospital, yes, some of my friends would show up, but it wouldn't be immediate. They would have to liaise with other priorities in their lives, shift things around and be like, oh my goodness, can we take leave? Can we do this? Can we do that? So that they can show up. It won't be immediate. And what the enticing thing about a romantic relationship is that everyone in those people's lives will know that so-and-so is in a relationship with Santato. Should anything happen, they can drop everything to be there. Or at least I hope they would, Even if it's work, it'd be like, oh my God, I've got this thing to go to. It's not requesting permission, so to speak. It's just informing those people and being there. Everything else will be handled after, And I don't think that's always possible with other friendships or with other relationships in our lives. You have to make those moving parts. And sometimes it's not possible. And that's because you don't rank that high in their list of priorities. And that's okay. Like, that's nothing to be said about. It could be that our parents take the, most or the first place in our list of priorities, followed by our jobs and followed by our partners or whatever else the case is, and then the friendship, you know what I mean? And so that's why then I find that, okay, I get to be someone else's priority. I get to be the thing people think about, because prioritizing other things is just the norm in our society. No one is going to prioritize their friend over their family or their job or their partner or all these other things. You know what I'm saying? So being selfish then is a way of us prioritizing ourselves, to say, I come first. I'm first and foremost. Everything else comes after. It comes second. It exists because I'm okay. And I don't think I've always done that. I don't think I've done that enough in my life. I show up for everyone. I extend myself. I do all of this in full view that most of us don't have partners, so we don't have people who will show up for us. It could be my friend having a race, and there's no one there for her. And I'll gladly show up because I know what it means for someone to show up to your race, and be someone's cheer squad. Even if they don't want that, and I'll probably be bringing all the attention to myself and them because I'll be the loudest in the room. And I'll probably have like dog ears that sparkle or a unicorn, I don't know, horn, something, a bow, balloons and all of that. That's just me. That's how I'm gonna show up. But it's also important that I prioritize myself, and I think the point was I was selfish on this trip, and it may not have worked out well for my friend, but I think going forward, I want to be selfish more. I want to prioritize myself more this year and not be so self-sacrificial. I think actually that's the word. I think in how I show up sometimes, I sacrifice myself. I sacrifice my own comfort to be there for people. And that's not always fair. If I love myself and want myself to do well and I am my priority, then I must think about my needs first before everyone else's. And that's okay, because I think people do that anyway. I'm just late to the party because I know love as being self-sacrificial. Chet was reading me for filth the other day, and she said, my Chet is a she. She said, I always feel like I need to earn love, and that's why I do so much. Now, I do enjoy doing so much, and I do enjoy showing up my people, but I think the source of that doing too much is in thinking that people will not love me for merely existing and for being myself. So I always need to be the nice one, the most helpful, the this and that. And that's how I grew up. Like, that's how I've shown up. If you grow up in a big family and you're almost invisible and you're othered, like for some reason you just always feel like an outsider, you do all these nice things that will make you favorable with grandparents, right? With cousins, with friends and everyone. Like, if you were not the pretty one, the smartest, the this and that, you do all these other things that you think will earn you attention and recognition and everyone's approval. And I've moved that way in my life. But now, this is a new year and this is a new me. So I'm saying I'm going to be more selfish. I remember this girl borrowing money on social media. I didn't even know her well. It was my last money. I hadn't been paid in like 3 months. But I gave it to her, with the understanding that she would pay it back, sure. And she was probably like in trouble, she said, which wasn't the case. But I was so willing to do that. And I'm like, nah, I'm going to stop doing that. Moving forward, that's not right. And I'm all for community, guys. You all know how much I feel about establishing communities, and showing up for people and like investing in these people. But it shouldn't come at my expense. There are times where it's necessary to make those sacrifices, but it should be for people who would willingly make the same jump for you, not just everyone. Not everyone is deserving of your selflessness. And yeah, I suppose I'm here to say, be selfish this year. Be selfish more. If you don't know how to say no, learn to say that more. Learn to put yourself first and be your own priority until there is someone who prioritizes you in their life like that, and you become the person who does the same for them. Be selfish, and I think another point is to have those difficult conversations. I know it's uncomfortable to have conversations about feelings because you could potentially be rejected. The other person may not see you or even acknowledge the role that they've played in where things are. And that does happen, right? And it's happened with me. But live your truth. I think the communication is more for your sake than the other person. So that whatever happens, if the relationship were to break down, you've taken responsibility for your actions, and you've done everything possible within your means to rectify that. So, yeah, no bad feelings. Communicate, and be selfish. Like, yeah, that's my point of rebellion today. And guys, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate this. I don't take it for granted. I am going to be posting more regularly now that I'm back, twice a week. And yeah, I am looking forward to bringing guests. I've already made a list of people I'd like to speak to and probably incorporating a video element to the podcast. I think that's going to be very fun. So please feel free to like and subscribe. Well, there's no subscribe here, but like follow the podcast so that whatever episode we publish, you don't miss out. I'm not going to be advertising them as much until all my social media stationaries in place. I've got someone who's going to assist me with that. So I'm very, very excited. I'm looking forward to what the podcast is going to look like this year. And I'm going to be interviewing real life people. It's not even interviewing. I really just want to have a conversation with these people. These are like some of the people I'm really excited about in my life to talk to get to know, and for you guys to get insight into the kind of conversations I have with them, because I think they're really, really important. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. Thank you so much for all the love, for the downloads, the listens, the shares. I really, really do appreciate it. And the feedback. Also, don't forget to leave your comments. I appreciate those quite a bit. And yeah, have a lovely day, you guys. I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers. Bye.